Let's talk about some of the basic materials for doing day-to-day quick figure sketches. As we get to projects that have more specific material needs, I will outline those for you in the assignments. This is a drawing in a red chalk or a Conte. Conte is a lot like red chalk, but it's a little compressed and has a little bit of oil in it. So here's some of the reddish colors that I like to use a lot. Because it has a little oil in it, it's not going to erase it all, but it's very good stuff for quick sketching. This is a stick of Conte. It comes in red and it also comes in black. And you notice I have a little bit of a chiseled edge on it, which I find really useful for you can make sharp lines and also make more broad strokes. So what you want to do is if you have a whole stick is just break it first of all and then file off an end. Just keep spinning it around until it has a little point on there. And when the Conte is very new, it also tends to make a little bit of a ragged edge. You know, your edge might not be so smooth, so if you dull down the edges a little bit, you can use it almost like a brush where you can make fine lines with it or broader strokes and make shading very good. So the Conte has a nice kind of reddish tone and we can make a finer point with it or use the side to make broader strokes. You can shade things really quickly. So it's a pretty good tool. I like this a lot for quick sketches because it goes dark quickly. Conte also comes in pencil form, which you will definitely want to sharpen with a sanding tool rather than put it in a pencil sharpener. It's a little bit soft, it'll chew it up. Also, if you'd like to draw with regular colored pencils, here's some of the ones I really like a lot. Lyra Rembrandt Indian Red or Faber-Castell of the same, and the Pitt Oil-Based Black. These are all great and pretty easy to find. I also find that the colored pencils are more dense. The Conte is the same density, but these colored pencils are a little more firm than Conte. So for longer drawings, they're easier to control. If you find yourself going too dark too fast, then drawing something that's a little more dense is going to help you. I'm not showing you a white Prismacolor pencil here, but you should get one of those too. We use it with a couple techniques. That's pretty straightforward. Let's take a look at paper. So for your day-to-day quick practice, you want something like this. This is very inexpensive sketch paper and it's acid-free, 50 pounds. You want inexpensive paper to do your practice drawing. Something like newsprint or the sketch paper. And you're gonna need a lot of it because you wanna practice a lot. So the pound weight, 50 pounds, just refers to the weight of a ream of paper of a certain size. So it just refers to the thickness of the paper, essentially. And sketch paper's fine like this, or newsprint, something inexpensive. And here's a drawing board. These are also very handy because you probably want some way to keep all your stuff in one place for practice. You can pull it out and then put it away when you don't need it. These drawing boards are a little bit bigger than 18 by 24, which is the sort of standard practice size for figure drawing. And these clips at the top work a little bit better than the flat type of clips. This is a little bit older drawing board, works a little bit better than some of the newer ones with the flat clips. Let's take a look at paper. So here are a couple of charts, one with drawing materials and one with paper. So even though we're talking about paper, I want to back up and talk a little bit about how I made these charts and why. So I have some friends in conservation and they tell me light fastness is one of the best tests for permanence of a material. So the way I made these charts was you take some, in this case, drawing materials, you do the same thing with paper, you cover half of it, and the sun, exposure to sunlight is a really good test for permanence. So what I did was I basically made these charts, covered half of the materials, left it in the sun for a few weeks, basically tape it into a window, and then uncover the other half of it. And then you can see if there's a difference between where the sun was exposed to it and where it wasn't, then you know your material is going to be more fugitive, which means it's not going to last as long. So 3 weeks in the sun is basically like 50 years for an art material. So it's a good way to test for how long your materials you're using are going to last. So if we look back at these charts, you'll notice on the paper chart, there's a difference in color on the left and right of some of the samples. And newsprint in particular, even though it's great stuff, it's inexpensive, I like it, but it is fugitive, which means it's going to change color pretty quickly. And the reason for that is when they make newsprint, they make wood into a pulp, then they bleach it out with sulfuric acid, and they don't counteract the sulfuric acid. So it really speeds the changing of the paper. It makes it change much more quickly. And if you notice, right above it is the Utrecht sketch paper that I was doing a demonstration on. And that's pH balance, which actually does a lot to help it stay the same color over time. So this is just something to consider for yourself, the permanence and quality of your materials. We'll look at some other papers. There's a Fabriano Tiziano, which Fabriano said was light fast, but you can see that it's not. And Fabriano is an old paper mill in Italy. They actually make paper for the euro. So I just want to show you this because I think it's important as a way of gauging the quality of your materials for yourself, because the quality of materials, especially early on in a class, is important because one of the first things you do is go out and buy some materials. So looking back at this chart, I have a lot of things on here. Basically, I wanted to test everything you might be even likely to try in this class, maybe. So there's a lot of things on here, and I'll post an image of the chart as well. One other thing I tested on this chart, which I thought could be interesting for you, is spray fix, since we use spray fix a lot, and I thought a good way to test it would just be to tape off little squares, drench it over and over with different things, and see how transparent it stays, since that's what you want out of spray fix, is it to interfere with your drawing as little as possible. So I have 4 kinds here. You see the hairspray from the dollar store, which is actually pretty good, Krylon matte finish, a little more gunky, and the Delacroix and Lascaux are the most transparent. The Delacroix is also a spray fix that you have in a pump bottle, so it's non-aerosol, which I think is an advantage, so it doesn't stink as much. At any rate, all of these things vary in price, so I just wanted to show you what I found out about how well they worked. So let's go back and look at the chart for drawing materials for a minute. As with the chart for the light fastness of paper, I basically tested everything you might be likely to use in this class for drawing materials. All the kinds of Conte, colored pencil, inks, white Prismacolor, gouache, a lot of drawing materials. And I'll leave this posted up so you can take a look at it. And there's a lot of things on this chart. I don't want to overwhelm you with options. I just want to show you, more importantly, how I tested them. And you notice actually all the things we're likely to use in class, all these earth tones, they're iron oxide colors, and they're very permanent. So I'm from New Mexico, from the desert, and there's red desert there that's been red for a very long time. So these reddish sanguine colors are very permanent, as are the blacks. So if I give you guys a material for assignment, I've actually already tested it. I'm gonna only really recommend permanent materials for you. Or in the case of inexpensive materials like newsprint, just let you know that it's gonna change color a little bit, which isn't really that a big deal for practice drawings. At any rate, I think more importantly, the big takeaway from these charts is to show you how to test things for yourself, because that really empowers you to not depend so much on the information that you get either from art supply stores or the manufacturers, because you want to make an informed choice. And this is to show you how to do that. So we're mostly talking about dry materials. We will be using ink a little bit in the class later on. If you already have ink, it's probably fine. I have a lot of inks on this chart, including some fairly exotic ones like Genuine Beaster that I got from Kramer Pigment, which is the kind of ink that Rembrandt used from birch soot. It's a nice brownish color. Actually, I like to use this ink, which is Liquitex acrylic ink in burnt umber. It has a nice dark brown color. It's acrylic based, so it's going to layer really well. It's inexpensive. It's easy to find. And if you want to buy brushes, I would recommend a filbert shape, and you'll also need one of these little inexpensive plastic things to mix your washes in. So brush shapes vary a little bit. Since we're working with a figure, I find it easier and more direct to use brushes that have a roundish, tapered off shape, like a round or a filbert. Those are much better for me than the flat, because a flat has a squared off shape, and we're drawing something organic, right? The only straight lines in nature are minerals and crystals. On the figure, everything's going to have a little bit of a curve to it. So the round and the filbert are more useful than the flat. In terms of the materials of your brush, I would just go inexpensive. These synthetics are great. Then you can use them for, if you're using them for watercolor, you can use them for ink and wash as well. You just want to wash them out. I did make a separate video for you guys on brush care, so I'll send that to you as well. So this wraps up the brief talk on materials, and I hope this has been useful and enjoyable for you.